Welcome into the DNVR Avalanche podcast presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. Use code DNVR when you sign up to get amazing odds boosts every single day. Rudo, AJ, and Jesse coming at you. We've made it over 48 hours since the Avalanche have done something, but that hasn't stopped the NHL from doing things. So, first of all, are you guys preparing for absolutely nothing to happen on deadline day? Are we ready to be live for 6 hours of nothing?
When Chiarot got traded yesterday, I looked at Z and I was like, Monday's going to be a real sleepy day for us. It's going to be a lot of us just recapping.
I'm gonna ask this, and I'm gonna say it's a way to like plug that show, but also for my own knowledge, when are we starting?
10 Mountain.
10. See, chat, 10 Mountain time. Come on by, hang out with us all day. That wasn't me not knowing what time to show up for work.
Truly, those shows have always been really fun.
They're a blast to do.
Yeah.
Also, a lot of the time, the first 4 hours are so we've had 2 trades.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's got a watch along feel because we're all just kind of hanging out together. The whole thing's very relaxed.
Because you can only talk about what's happening immediately in front of you, and then if you try to say, well, we're going to talk about this, this, and this.
Yeah, if you try and have any kind of true show rundown, then that's when everything pops off, and it's okay,
here we go.
Yeah.
No, but it's going to be interesting because for a minute I thought maybe some of these teams are going to push it to deadline day just with the cap. Teams need to accrue cap space. You need to wait as long as you possibly can. But yeah, the Avs kind of knocked over the first couple dominoes, and we've seen a couple more fall in the last 24 hours.
Yep.
We'll see if there's any left by Monday.
I hope there's some left, at least a few pieces, but we'll see as we kind of dig into really 2 significant moves done yesterday. Would you guys rather start with JARNKROK or Chiarot?
Let's start with JARNKROK because I don't think it'll take long.
Yeah, right. That's where I was at with that. I think we've talked about JARNKROK a little bit before in the Avs, at least. He ends up going to Calgary. Calgary felt like they have a decent core of forwards already.
I was surprised when it was Calgary, but I was also not surprised because their bottom line, that actual fourth line, with Brett Ritchie and Dylan Dubé, has given them nothing. They've gotten nothing out of it.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know. It was one of those things where they had made their move for Tyler Toffoli. There was a lot of chatter out there that they were still wanting to do something else. But again, Tyler Toffoli was kind of a big get. So I didn't know really what else would they go out there and do. I know that they were sniffing around Ben Chiarot, but yet, AJ, like you said, at face value, I was a little surprised, but then the more I let it kind of sit there with me, I was like, yeah, okay, this makes sense as their second move. And now I would say it's pretty safe to say that Calgary's done.
They don't have a lot of space left.
Yeah.
Right. Unless they want to do some money out deals. I mean, look, I think we can all agree that we've all kind of felt like Calgary were the pretenders this year in the West. And they made 2 moves that weren't overly splashy, but solidified their middle 6. I mean, they're a better team than they were 2 weeks ago when they got Toffoli.
Yeah.
They're a better team today than they were then. So, yeah.
I think they're the second best team out West.
Yeah. Now I do.
That doesn't mean a bunch to me though. So.
No, I mean, it's second best out West. It's cool.
You're 6th best in the league if you're the second best out West or something. So
maybe.
Yeah.
Generously putting them at 6th in the NHL.
Yeah.
I think they're more like the 8th or 9th best team in the NHL, to be honest. I would take almost all of the East over them.
Yeah. So
good goaltending though. Real good goaltending.
Yeah, I mean, you can't
Markstrom is
knock
good.
that. So Calgary, an interesting one directly against the Avs, right? Because they're 1-1 in the season series. They have another game coming up at the end of this month, more or less. And their own head coach saying any wild card team playing the Avs is literally a waste of time. So a bit interesting that they do seem to be gunning for it that hard. It ends up being a second, a third, and a seventh for JARNKROK. So that's pretty darn expensive for a guy that's going to play bottom 6 minutes.
Yeah, for a capped bottom 6 guy. Now he he does do a little bit of everything. So that versatility is nice. He's a pretty reliable goal scorer. In that he chips in a few every year, right around the same number. I like JARNKROK's a solid player. He's a fine get. I think he'll be fine in Calgary. He's not the world's greatest skater. So there isn't a worry about, like in Colorado, we talk about, well, if you're not a great skater, you're going to be kind of an awkward fit from the start, especially at forward. But not a pace is not something that the Flames play with a ton of. So it's cool. He'll be a fine fit there. It's a little expensive, but like a second, a third, and a seventh it's fine.
It's not outrageous, sure.
Yeah, I think it's a little on the expensive side for a hard bottom 6 guy, but that's okay. I mean, you got to do what you got to do if you're going to try and get somebody at the deadline,
Yeah, I will say though, and I know we're going to get into the Chiarot deal here in a few, but I have been a little surprised, especially after what we saw the Avs pay for Josh Manson. And the conversation that we had on the show about a week ago about, hey, this is going to be a buyer's market. There's a lot of guys that are around. We don't, I don't think that prices are going to get run up as high. And both that JARNKROK deal and Ben Chiarot, I think we're a bit of an overpay for the player that you're getting in return.
So
yeah, I mean, I think you overpay pretty much for everybody at the deadline, given how limited the amount of time they're actually there with you.
Yeah.
JARNKROK bothers me less. The Chiarot one felt like a team that was determined to win the bidding for what they viewed as the best in market defenseman that was available. They were determined to win it, and so they gave up whatever they had to give up in order to get there, knowing that they had the assets to turn around, the assets in the cap space to turn around and do whatever else they wanted to do.
Anytime you don't give up a first, I think you can at least talk yourself into it, right? But I do want to look at it this way, and I understand the deadline is not done. There's likely still more things to come, especially for the Avs. But right now, Avs have Manson and Sturm. Calgary has gotten to Foley and JARNKROK. Whose deadline do you like better?
Both.
That's not an answer. That's a cop out. Yeah.
Well, I think Manson. The keys there are Manson and Toffoli.
Sure, those are the bigger moves of for each team.
Because Toffoli, I'm considering the regular season too much in this answer. I think it's Colorado with Manson, because what Manson is going to do is going to be way more important come postseason. I think he's going to be way more of an impact player. Than wherever Toffoli ends up, because Manson, he bridges the gap perfectly. He can be their third guy right now, and if Girard never gets fully healthy, if Byram never gets fully healthy, they still have a top 3. They're no longer using these other guys as they're in their top 4. Like, I just think Manson is exactly what Colorado needed. He was precisely the kind of guy they needed, with a skill set that fit what they wanted to do. It was just a really, really good, solid checks all the boxes.
Yep.
Kind of pickup. And I don't think Toffoli did that. I think Toffoli just like makes them deeper. It doesn't like solve a problem necessarily. It just undoubtedly like they are better after that deal. Definitely.
So the first part of your answer was like, all right, cool, I'm going to add to this. And then the entire second part of your answer was everything I was going to add. So that's perfect. Because
sorry, my bad.
No. It's because that's exactly what I was going to say. Calgary, I think, made two moves that just kind of bolstered the team in place. The Avs made a move that addressed an area of need and made them noticeably better. Not just like, oh wow, they kind of bulked up, they added to their depth. No, they fixed an area that they felt needed to be fixed. A lot of people on the outside have said that that's an area of the Avs that needed to be improved upon. I know we who watch them up close disagree with that, but I mean, at the end of the day, they addressed it either way. So everything that you kind of said on the back end there of your answer is exactly why I think that to this point, it's been the Avs. I think they've made their team better. They made their team cheaper, and they upgraded on Jost, shed money. They upgraded their back end. And like you said, Manson's someone who can play in that 3 spot, even if you're fully healthy, if you want him to. He's going to flex all over the lineup, and they haven't given up a first-round pick yet.
To be honest, if best case scenario plays out and Josh Manson ends up on your third pairing in the postseason, you're so good.
Yeah.
You're so good.
Definitely feels pretty ridiculous at that point. There was another trade yesterday that really isn't very impactful, but the Rangers did get Frank VITRANO from the Panthers for a 4th.
Good for them. They really need help with their bottom 6 scoring. VITRANO should be able to provide a little bit of punch there. Good shooter.
Yeah, so I was going to say, so when we're ready to get into the Chiarot, are we ready to move over to Chiarot?
As soon as I do these ad reads.
Perfect.
So we are brought to you, of course, by DraftKings Sportsbook. You can go over there. You can use the DNVR code to sign up and get incredible odds boosts. You got to get over there and get yourself a bunch of free money. It's too late to get the actual free money from the Georgia bet. That you missed out on a free $50 on that one. But there's still plenty of amazing opportunities that you have right now. When it comes to college basketball, if you're a new account and you use the DNVR code, all you have to do is bet $5 on any team to win in March Madness and get $200 in free bets. So that's an absurd amount of free bets. Go get $200 to mess around with on DraftKings Sportsbook just by picking a super easy matchup in the March Madness tournament. Jump on it today. Go over to DraftKings Sportsbook and download that top-rated sportsbook app. Now you can do same-game parlays. You can bet on literally every single sport that even pretends to exist. Some of these, like, debatably aren't even sports. But we're not going to get into that conversation here and now. So go over there, bet $5 to win at $200 on any March Madness team. Must be 21 or older, Colorado only, new customers only. Other terms, restrictions, and conditions apply. Minimum of $5 deposit. See at DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. And of course, if you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-522-4700. When you make a ton of money from DraftKings, take out $25 and go get a Vaca TV. That's the best way to watch Altitude right now. And you don't have to deal with Comcast, who doesn't have it. It's way cheaper than DirecTV. You don't have to sail the high seas of the internet to go and watch it if you're local here in Denver. All you have to do, go to avaca.tv/DNVR. Once you're over there, you're pretty much good to go. Get it all set up. They'll ship you out a little reception box. You hook it up to your TV. It's just like watching normal TV with your remote control. Nothing complicated about it. You just get to turn on Altitude and watch the Avs. You also be able to turn on AT&T Sports Network and watch the Rockies. You could also watch national channels all through Avaca. So super easy, super fast, super cheap. It's a great way to watch. Highly recommend. You go to avaca.tv/DNVR and check out a great way to watch hockey. Second period of the DNVR Avalanche podcast presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. Obviously, the big move that we've alluded to here is Ben Chiarot getting traded to the Florida Panthers. Florida gives up a first, a fourth, and Ty Smolanic as a prospect. Montreal got what they wanted out of this deal, right? They wanted a first, they got it.
Yeah. How is that prospect?
Ty Smolanic? Ty Smolanic would be an Av had he been there.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Ty Smolanic and Jean-Luc Foudy. That was that draft where it was like they were going to pick one of those guys. Smolanic, a local kid. He's from Colorado. To answer your actual question, though, he's legit.
Nice. Okay. Well, so it was interesting because, look, like there's been a lot of movement between both the Avs and the Panthers in the last week, and there's been a lot of move where you say, okay, they're obviously they're gearing up something, and that to me, that Frank VITRANO trade, I said, oh, yep, they're clearing the decks, making the money so that Philly has to retain less, a little bit more desirable. So I really did. I kind of said, well, there you go. That's probably it for Giroux. And then they go and spend their only first-round pick for the next 2 years on Ben Chiarot, along with one of their top prospects. I know there's a lot of talk about Owen Tippett right now, but it was just a peculiar move because for as much as we've heard that the Florida Panthers are in on Claude Giroux, how much we've heard in the last few days maybe Claude Giroux is more interested in going to Florida than he is to Colorado. I just thought it was a weird move that they then go out and spend a couple of high-priced assets on Ben Chiarot.
It's a weird.
Is my audio messed up for you guys?
No, it's fine.
Okay, you're fine.
For
once.
So the Giroux conversation is a weird one because even now people are saying Florida are still in the Giroux conversation, even with no 22 or 23 first. It's not going to be easy for them to get that done, I think, without that piece, but maybe doable. But also, when you look at Florida's lineup, it makes more sense to me that they went out and got D, right? Their forward core is kind of ridiculous. And on the back end, they have Ekblad and Weegar, but after that, it falls off pretty quick. They're relying on like Brandon Montour to be their second pairing guy, who, by the way, having a pretty good year. Just saying. But Chiarot does make them better, right? It's just, was it worth it for them? I think it does. I know Chirot's numbers are terrible, but
they're terrible this year.
Yeah.
And so you wonder how much of this is because there's a guy that I want to talk about later on the show that's similar in that the numbers are just awful this year. And it's like everybody in Montreal this year is bad.
Yeah.
So how much of this is Ben Chiarot isn't any good, and how much of this is just the Montreal stink?
Some of A, some of B, perhaps.
Yeah.
So, because I think there's just a really big drop off in Chiarot's play this season, and the cost is significant here, and it's weird to pay for kind of a depressed asset like that at that kind of a price.
Yep.
To pay a top-ish. I don't know where Smolanic would have been in the Panthers prospect hierarchy, but a top-ish prospect and a first-round pick. I mean, that's expensive. It just is. Like those are assets, man. Like that's expensive.
Yeah.
For a guy where you're like, okay, well, what's the impact of Ben Chiarot? Where does he play? And with Chiarot, it's like, is he going to play? Is he going to play on their second pairing? Is he going to play? Adding him to a defense that has Radko Gudas, you got a lot of nastiness back there. So it's, I don't know, it's cool for him, for Chiarot to get to go and chase another cup. And it's interesting. The Florida, I think we knew was going to make a big move on defense because that just made sense. They had assets, they have cap space, they've got all the everything that you could want to go hard at this deadline. Their interest in Giroux feels like a because we can.
Yeah.
And because Tampa Bay can't kind of thing. And it's like, I can respect that. But it's going to be expensive because, as Rudo mentioned, no firsts. Owen Tippett is a legit prospect. They've also, for some reason, Florida only keeps drafting forwards, except that time they drafted Spencer Knight. And if I'm Florida, Spencer Knight is not on the table.
No way.
I might consider Anton Lundell, but I would be iffy at that. But I mean, you also have, I mean, Grigory Denisenko and Mackie Samoskevich. Those are all guys that they drafted in the first round that are still in their system. So
let's talk about Owen Tippett for a second, because I mean he's a good prospect. But I mean, I don't know. He's bounced in and out of the NHL. He hasn't really stuck. He's 23 already, down in the AHL. Like, what is Philly really thinking that they're going to get out of him that he hasn't had the opportunity to get in Florida? I just think that it's a weird, again, just when you step back and look at this, I agree with you. I do think they look at Giroux as more of a luxury for them. We can, and I think you're right. Tampa Bay can't, so that's why they want it. But again, like, I'm looking at
none of the other teams can. Like, Toronto can't do it. None of these other teams that they're fighting with can fit Giroux in. And so I think Florida's looking at it like, do we need that guy? Our forward core is already sick. But if we can just convince Philadelphia, hey, here's Owen Tippett, here's Samoskevich, here's, they have a second round pick next year. You can throw that in there. So there's next year's second with Tippett or a Denisenko or a Samoskevich. Like, hey, here's like, clean it out. Like, here's the rest of our shit. Go have fun. Philly, like, part of the thing with Tippett not sticking in the NHL is that Florida's forward core has just been deep. Yeah. And I just think it's been tough because he's been a very, very, very good AHL player. And he's been a productive NHL player in a complimentary role a couple of times in his NHL stints. So I just think that that's a guy where it's like, hey, here's a guy just looking for opportunity.
Yeah.
More than anything else.
A team like Philly can try him on a second line, something like that.
Yeah.
And maybe all of a sudden it clicks for him. I mean, maybe it doesn't. That's going to be on Philly's scouting staff to make a decision on a guy, right?
Yeah. Well, and then what I was going to say on Ben Chiarot, I mean, to me, I think he wasn't eligible for the UFA bump this last year, but very, very well documented. Good playoffs last year. Real mean, nasty part of Montreal's core D-core that helped them go on the surprise run. And I think Montreal got the benefit from that. You usually see it where a guy is going into UFA and he has that crazy playoff run and gets paid. Unfortunately, it was Montreal who got to get paid on this one. I think he's a fine defenseman. I think he'll help Florida's D-core. But, regardless of who gave it up, I just don't know if the first-round pick, especially a 2023 first-round pick, which sounds like is a little bit more of the coveted pick this deadline. GMs are maybe for the first time taking a first round from a year from now instead of this immediate one. You usually see them wanting an immediate pick. I don't know. It's just interesting. And like I said, it's just, if they're actually still in on Giroux.
And there's no doubt about that.
Yeah, they're definitely in on it, but
but I mean, like, it makes it harder to see.
A week ago, it felt like, hey, if Florida wants Giroux, they can pay more than anybody else.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now it feels like, you know what? The Avs have just as many assets as Florida does.
Well, and what the Avs might actually have for Philadelphia that would be more attractive is a defensive prospect.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because where is Florida's big D prospect? Where's the young one? Because again, they've only drafted forwards except for the one time. They drafted Spencer Knight that one time, and good call by them. But they've otherwise just been like forwards every single year. So when you're talking about what assets do they have to trade, it's forwards.
Yeah.
And is that really where Philadelphia has their big problem? If you're looking at the Flyers roster and you're like, all right, we're gonna try and retool this because we have a lot of money signed for the next several years, and we don't really think that we can tear it all down and rebuild it, right? But you take Giroux out of there, you still have Kevin Hayes, you have James Van Riemsdyk, you have Cam Atkinson, Travis Konechny, Joel Farabee has a big extension that kicks in next year. Like, where exactly would all the forwards play? Is that really the big area of need? Is Owen Tippett really a bigger need for them than Justin Barron?
Right. Well, and especially because there's more and more rumors every day that they're shopping Sanheim. Everyone knows they're shopping Justin Braun. There's a lot of talk now about, are they looking to maybe move on from Ivan Provorov, whether it be at the deadline or in the summer? They're talking about moving out a lot of their defense. Justin Barron, I imagine, would probably finish the season in the NHL.
Well, and
in Philly.
maybe the Avs are like, look, we're not. We think Justin Barron's going to be in the NHL with us next year.
Right.
We're not doing that, and they just won't. And the Avs are just saying no.
Yeah.
We draw the line somewhere.
Yeah, we think Claude Giroux is great. We love the player. We think he'd be a great addition, but we're just not doing that for Claude Giroux. And they're saying Sean Barron's instead. And maybe that's where the Flyers are like, look, we really like Sean Barron's. We think that he's a hell of a player, but he's not helping our NHL club for 2 or 3 years.
Well, and this conversation gets interesting, I think, especially because Braun's a pending UFA. Yandel's a pending UFA. The depth guys that they've been using in Connaughton and Nick Seeler are both UFAs. They have Cam York down there. They have chosen to lock themselves into Rasmus Ristolainen for reasons. So they have like $17 million.
Hey, he's a really likable guy, all right? Nice guy, works hard,
great.
Loves the game.
Okay. Him and Ryan O'Reilly. There are openings on that defense for a player on an ELC. Yes, they have Cam York down there too, but Seattle, or rather Philly's lineup, is extremely top heavy right now. They need some contracts that make sense dollar value wise. And Justin Barron would be that. Owen Tippett would be as well. But an ELC, a true ELC, I think fits a little bit better in a retool or whatever you want to call it that Philly is trying to accomplish.
Yeah, Owen Tippett at the end of his ELC, which if he shows up and actually like breaks out and scores a bunch, then it's like, great, now we got to play this dude.
Right.
Great. Okay, we got 1 cheap year out of him.
Right, and that's the end of the cheap.
Yeah, exactly.
I do want to
go ahead
talk more about Chiarot and some of the comparisons around the league and what it means for the deadline, but we are brought to you by Breckenridge Brewery, the official beer of DNVR. So be sure to go get some at your local liquor store. You can use the Breck Beer Locator online to do that, or go down to the bar. 8 different kinds on tap down there. And make sure you're taking care of your teeth. Go over to Green Mountain Dental Group, get a screening with a cleaning, an x-ray, and an exam. You get a free Sonicare toothbrush so you can take care of your teeth at home. 2, very important, taking care of your teeth is good. Don't have bad teeth, it sucks. Trust me. So go to Green Mountain Dental Group on that and make sure you're in good health. Also, April 16th, Avalanche Party Bus. We know a bunch of you have already bought tickets, but get in there, get your tickets if you're in town or you're local or whatever. You get rides to and from the arena from the bar. So you come to the bar, you have fun partying. You go to the game, you have fun partying. You come back to the bar, you have fun partying. It's just an all-around great night. The tickets are great. They're in section 120, and you get to vibe with all the DNVR people while you're there. So it's just an absolute blast all the way around. Be sure to jump in. You can go to the DNVR locker right now and get your tickets for the party bus. Third period on the DNVR Avalanche podcast presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. Okay, so Chiarot or Manson, and I want to do this in two parts. Ignore cost for a second. Chiarot or Manson?
Manson.
Yeah.
For Colorado?
Just 1-to-1, comparing the players.
Oh, I think they're pretty similar.
Okay.
But I would say for Colorado because of the right-handed thing.
Sure.
I would have Manson as more valuable for the Avalanche.
I also just say Manson because he's got a history of being a really solid defenseman in the NHL. And I do just think that, not that Chiarot isn't good, but his stock is at an all-time high because he was part of that miracle run last year to the Cup final. To me, Manson just a little bit more, I don't necessarily want to say proven, but there's to me there's just a little bit more substance to Manson's career.
All right. So in that regard, you're picking Manson. The other question I have is, one, does Chiarot now set the market for the defense by giving up a first-round pick for that guy? You still have guys like DeHaan and Giordano out there. And I know we've had the conversation about how many teams are really going to be making a move.
Yeah.
And two, when you look at what Joe gave up for Manson compared to Chiarot, has the NHL made Joe look like a genius once again?
Well, I think Florida's desperation for that particular player won out. I don't think that it's necessarily markets. I think that sets the top of the market. But when you look at Giordano, you look at
everyone knows those are Plan B guys.
DeHaan, like those are, for whatever reason, they're not valued the same way. It's weird to me that Ben Chiarot was more valuable than Mark Giordano, but it's the world that we're living in. I have a really hard time believing that there are other first-round picks waiting to be given up. Colorado's out on it. Florida's out on it. Tampa Bay's out on it. I guess maybe you could talk yourself into Toronto.
Yeah. I think they're going to end up giving up a first for Giordano.
Who else out there are you really looking at? How aggressive?
Talk themselves into another D. Yeah.
Okay, but Carolina already gave up this year's first, so it would have to be next year's first. Like you're talking about a couple of years of first round picks that they would have to be willing to move on from.
Yep.
I think that's tough.
Yeah.
Would you maybe 2 seconds instead?
Would I? Sure. Would Seattle?
I mean, if Carolina called and said, "Hey, we'll give you 2 seconds for Mark Giordano," I mean, you're really gonna say no to that?
Based on track record, maybe.
No, well, I understand. I guess I understand that Ron Francis is involved, so you never really know. I guess, I forgot that St. Louis, you could also get involved. Minnesota can't really give up those assets right now.
Yeah.
Because they really need those to turn into players.
I was going to say, as much as it always pains, Abs fam to give credit to the Wild for anything, I've been really impressed with Bill Guerin and just kind of his understanding of the situation they're in. He's been very upfront. Like, look, we're in a good spot, and they've slipped a little bit recently, But he's like, I'm not going to do anything dumb. Like we're already we already are staring down the barrel of cap problems. I'm not going to do anything that's going to put us in a worse situation. Like they made those buyouts to ultimately help the organization in the long term, and I think it will. And he's like, look, I'm not going to do something stupid just to try to talk myself into us being a cup contender for this year and then us be a lottery team for the next 7. So I've been impressed that you know, he came in, made the move that kind of shocked everyone, that put him in a tough situation, but he hasn't made it any worse.
You got to give him some credit too for a first-time GM. Takes big stones to do that right off the bat.
Yeah. Fan favorites, captains.
Yeah, I mean,
all that stuff. Knowing that it's going to hurt the team for a few years, but like you ultimately look at it as for the betterment of the team.
Yeah.
I don't know. And then, like I said, he's been surprisingly rational. We've seen a trend in these last couple of years. Columbus kind of started it where if you feel like this is your 1 year and you have an outside shot, go for it. And he's like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to make things worse.
Okay. Are we content on the Chiarot talk, or is there anything else you really want to hit on there? Good.
The only thing I'll say, and it's not even necessarily pertaining to Chiarot, I am just anxious to see how this kind of shakes everything else out, because I think he was a top target for a lot of teams. I'm going to be anxious to see how many teams do move on to a plan B, how that affects the price of those plan B targets, and how many teams just say, well, we wanted Chiarot, but we just aren't willing to pay what we were willing to pay for him for someone else and just get out of it or whatever. It's I'm more of anxious to see what happens now that Chiarot's name is off the table.
Yep. And that's where we're headed. The questions are, what are the next dominoes to fall? There's been a lot of rumors swirling about Max Domi recently. Is there anyone else on your guys' radar?
I'm curious about Christian Dvorak.
Okay.
He got activated today. He's been hurt for a while. As I mentioned earlier with Chiarot, I'm curious. This is a guy that piques my curiosity here, because this year, again, the Montreal stink, right? Like everything has been bad about Montreal up until the last, until Marty St. Louis took over.
Yeah.
And then it's been like, oh, hockey's fun again. Cole Caulfield knows how to play. Like, very different. But I'm interested in a Dvorak situation, because that's a guy who's 26 years old. Now, how good is he? How good is he, like, really? He had good underlying numbers when he got traded up there. He signs that deal in Arizona, the 6-year deal with John Chayka. He's making just under $4.5 million. He's halfway through that contract. There's 3 years left on that deal after this at 4.45. So again, 26 years old. How healthy is he? How good is he? He's never had a 40-point season, but 31 points in 56 games last year in Arizona. He's had seasons of 33, 37, and 38 points. He's got 16 and 34 games in Montreal this year, and everything has been a disaster. And I'm just sort of curious. We've been talking about the Avs doing something out of left field. I wonder about a guy like this, because he could be insurance that he could be, hey, but he's the 2C next year, and Alex Newhook is a wing. Or they could swap those two. Or ultimately Newhook takes the 2C job and Dvorak moves to 3, or whatever alignment.
However they want to sort it, yeah.
And I'm saying whatever alignment they decide to have is I think intriguing. But I just wonder that's a guy that I kind of, when he got activated, I was kind of like, I wonder. As a younger guy who's going to be, again, a depressed asset because of how things have gone, but still have value. And with the term that's on there, And you're not talking about buying at his absolute peak value like JT Miller. The thing with JT Miller, all of his points are coming on the fucking power play. So, yeah, he's having a career year, and he's doing all this, and he's doing all that. Well, guess what? He's going to be the 4th or 5th best guy if he goes to an actual good team. But because he's on the shitty Canucks, he's their everything for them right now because Elias Pettersson forgot how to play. And, like, Brock Besser's good but not great. And I just wonder, like, JT Miller just feels like you're buying this guy at his peak value. Like, peak value. Yeah, half of his points are on the power play. That is fact. Like, that's inarguable. Like, you can go and look at his numbers and just be like, how many are at even strength? How many are on the power play? It's not exactly 50-50, but you look at the big difference in JT Miller's career, and you're like, wow, how is he in the top 10 of scoring? He has 73 points this year. He has 30 on the power play. So it's not like he's having a bad year at even strength. But him having an all-world year on the power play is inflating that. And wherever he goes, he's not going to be that number one guy. He's the whole power play is not going to run through him. So you're talking about, like, yeah, you're talking about paying for JT Miller's production at absolute peak value. His underlying numbers aren't very good. His production is inflated by power play. Why would you want to go to the mat and pay for that when that guy is going to be
right? The problem there at the end of the day is price. Like, you're okay with a guy who can be a PP impact player and a solid 5-on-5 guy for you if you can get him for a reasonable price. But Vancouver is going to ask for a king's ransom for that guy if you're trying to pry him out of there.
Well, and especially because they're in a legitimate playoff race because of the way that Vegas and Edmonton seasons have gone. Vancouver's been able to crawl back into it. JT Miller's got term. There is no incentive. Like, there really is no incentive for Vancouver to move on from him right now.
Yep.
We're waiting to see.
The incentive is that his value will never be higher.
Well, right, but
that's it. That's the incentive.
And that's kind of my thing is, like, they're sitting there and it's like, if we want to move him now, great. We'll never get more for him. But if we want to keep him, if we think we can get in,
well, and that's
like,
and if someone rolls up and is like, hey, we'll give you 2 firsts and a A-grade prospect or whatever, it's like, well, our hands are tied, I guess.
Yeah.
But
legitimately, though, you get in, and
there's no reason for them to take less than
like
what's exactly what
okay. So you get into the postseason. Great.
Oh,
now
Vancouver?
What?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, if you get in and you're the 8th seed and you lose 4-1 to Colorado in the first round, like you got 2 home games worth of ticket revenue out of that. Your fan base feels good about itself. You feel good. You feel like you're on the up, and then you go into the summer and you have no cap space and you have big problems trying to figure out what your future is. Because you have a ton of wasted money throughout your organization. You have very little cap space. You need to give Brock Besser a new deal. You have real cap problems.
Yeah, but I do think that in that market, especially the way the season started, I'm not saying I agree with them. I agree with you, but I could see them putting value on, we got in. We came back.
Right. Teams do that every year. They make that decision.
Detroit,
absolutely, and it's not.
Detroit willingly drove their franchise into the ground just to do it.
Like, it's not without merit. Like, it's not like, oh, hey, we made the postseason, and that's a meaningless accomplishment. Right. Like, in an organization that is trying to rebuild back into respectability and trying to rebuild into saying, hey, we need to be taken seriously, making the postseason is a meaningful thing. But if you're talking about trading JT Miller, and the biggest selling point that you have is that JT Miller gives you 2 playoff runs.
Yep.
And look, if nobody offers you something within a mile of what you think he's worth, you gotta have a first round pick, at least one first round pick. You'd prefer to have another high pick in there, a second, third, maybe something conditional, whatever, right? You've got to have it. You've got to have a top prospect involved in that. That's great. Like, that's okay. And then after that, how far are teams willing to go for the guy? Because a lot of teams have analytics departments. A lot of teams have access to the same kind of data that I do, where I look at it and I say, hey, I mean, theirs is better, of course, but they look at it, they look at the underlying numbers, and they're like, this is a good player with a great price tag because he's got a ton of points.
So,
and like, JT Miller is a really good player, but if you put him on a cup contending team, fucking pick one. Pick any of the teams that you think are realistically competing for the Stanley Cup. Is his situation the same? Is he getting the same ice time? Is he getting the same opportunity? Or is everything about his game going to fall off because now he's on a good team with way better talent around him, where he's no longer the center of everything that team is doing on the ice anymore?
He definitely falls down the lineup on any cup contender. I think there's no doubt about that. But I think part of the conversation here is Vancouver can kind of have their cake and eat it too, where they can make a first-round playoff appearance this year, and then they can sell JT Miller next year. And yes, the price will be lower next year, no doubt about it.
Definitely, they could also do that. Mm-hmm. Totally,
probably still get a first-round pick out of it.
Yeah, and still get a perfectly fine return. And this is why I'm like, okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
But JT Miller's a good player. I'm not paying the moon for that.
Agreed.
I'm not. And so if that's their ask here, have fun.
Yeah.
We hope to see JT Miller in the first round on the other side of the ice as your best player, because we've got a handful of them. I would take 4 Colorado forwards and 2 Colorado defensemen before I got to JT Miller.
Yep.
So that's your best player, dude. You're lucky if that's a 5-game series. The only thing that maybe changes that is Thatcher Demko goes wild.
Yeah, for a game,
which sounds like a bad spring break video.
So just looking at the clock, knowing that we are probably going to start winding this down, I just want to get this out there.
Yeah.
And this is just because I haven't stopped thinking about kind of, AJ, what you have reported now and what we've heard from a couple other outlets, that yes, the Avs are in on Giroux. They're in on a couple of these ones that people are hearing about, right? Andrew Kopp, they're checking in on prices. But that there is the sense that the Avs are maybe trying to do something off the board. A blockbuster nobody sees coming. And the other night we were, Rudo, Blaze, and myself, we were at the bar and we were just talking about who could that be? What are some of the names that you could see being moved on from? And one name that came to my mind that, again, keep in mind, this is for like an out of left field that nobody sees, but then it was mentioned the next day on the Merrick show that, hey, maybe this could be kind of a dark horse candidate to be moved. Clayton Keller is a name that just came to me that, again, that's based on nothing other than me thinking that. But that's just a guy that he's having a real good year. There's been rumors in the past about Arizona maybe wanting to move him if the price is right. I thought that was an interesting one when it came to me. And then I heard it brought up the next morning, not necessarily related to the Avs, but hey, maybe this is a dark horse guy that could kind of be on the move in a surprise deal. What do you think about that?
I don't know why Arizona would do it.
I'm not really sure either, but
like they have to get to the floor. They have nobody signed. If they get rid of his $7 million, like
they can retain.
I mean,
but no,
I'm saying Arizona has concerns getting to the floor next year. They need that $7 million. If they get rid of that $7 million, like they're like, hey, we kind of need Eric. We need Eric Johnson back. We're trying to get to the floor here, man. No, they like Clayton Keller's having a career year, and I think that they just need to sit there. They need to just sit and let that happen.
I don't know. And I just don't know how the Avs commit to $7 million for the next 7 years either.
I mean, I imagine there would be a little bit of retention, but again, I'm thinking a lot about this out of left field move, and I don't know. I think if you're the Avs, you'd be pretty happy with a Clayton Keller guy. Again, based on nothing other than me thinking.
I mean, even with retention, Arizona's going to pay the Avs for 6 years. They're going to pay to have Clayton Keller. Yeah, they're going to pay for Clayton Keller to play against them. I just, I could see. There were some people that brought up Nick Schmaltz because he's had like the month of his life.
Dude had 15 points in like 4 games.
yeah, but it's like he had something like 19 points coming into the start of March, and now he's got 42 points. Yeah, 42.
Yeah.
And it's like Nick Schmaltz has always been really talented, but he's a really soft player.
Yeah.
And has never really committed to playing the game in a certain way to maximize his talent. 4 years at just under $6 million, and you're like, how good is this guy?
It's just so hard to move those length of deals at the deadline,
right.
because teams just don't know where they're going to be in the offseason.
Well, and this is where I was curious about Dvorak, in the same way that I'm curious about a guy like in Anthony Beauvillier, right? Where you're just like, a guy with a little bit of term, but feels sort of stuck in the organization, and where are they headed? Yeah. You know, how much does a guy like Dvorak help the Canadiens? You know, et cetera, et cetera. You could throw Josh Anderson into that list for Montreal too.
That contract's bad though.
Well, I mean, it's not great, dude. It's not great.
Well, you know, and we haven't even mentioned, and I mean, I guess it's not super relevant. You know, all the stuff is. I was just looking. You know, power rankings just came out, and you know, I dropped Vegas pretty far. I lost 5 in a row. Now it sounds like Robin Lehner's maybe done for the rest of the regular season. I wrote in the power rankings that right now the word around Vegas is that they are. Some level of cold water hit them in the face, and they're like, hold on, holy shit. We need to take a pause before we go out and start doing anything else. And LTIR this guy to bring in someone else. Like, it's a really interesting dynamic in the Pacific right now. I think there's spots up for grabs that people didn't think there would be. And like, you go look at the standings right now, there's 4 teams that we all thought would be sellers that are like within 2 points of a playoff spot. Winnipeg. A lot of people are talking about Winnipeg in the chat, and Andrew Kopp. I think they're a point out with 2 games in hand.
Andrew Kopp is currently hurt again. There's no timetable for his return. Everybody talking about Andrew Kopp is overlooking the fact that he has something like 4 or 5 concussions in the last couple of years. Like Andrew Kopp might be your Michael Furland like landmine here, that you give up assets and he never does anything for you.
Yeah. AJ, who is your who is your out of left field if they miss out on Giroux? Do you have any gut feeling?
I've talked about Mark Scheifele because I think that I think with just a couple of years left on that deal, that there's something broken in Winnipeg's formula, because they should just be better than they are. And I think that they have a coaching issue. Using an interim coach all year will get you there. Yep. But I think that I wonder about a guy like Scheifele, because I think that Ehlers is just on too good of a deal. I think Dubois is going to stay there. I think a lot of their other guys are fine, but I wonder about Scheifele. And I think Colorado, I know that they were really interested in Dubois before he landed in Winnipeg, and the Avs just did not have an asset like Patrick Laine to make that kind of deal. But I wonder if they would just be like, look, you guys have had a problem with defense. We'll give you Justin Barron and Sean Behrens and a first-round pick for Mark Scheifele and just be like,
yeah,
we're good. That's our move. And you keep in mind this last summer when we thought there was going to be an Olympics, there was a lot of talk about how Nathan McKinnon and Mitch Marner played together. Do you guys remember who the third guy on that line was?
Is it Scheifele?
It was Mark Scheifele. He was the other dude on the other side there. And so this is me just wondering, right? Like, you guys, I've been talking about it. Hey, I think they're going to do something that we're not seeing coming. This would certainly qualify. I think that this is more realistically a summer conversation because Mark Scheifele has figured it out. He's been playing great hockey recently, and the Jets are back involved. But I just think I think that's food for. I think it's food for the mind there because he's a name that just won't go away when I try and think about it. That the Jets kind of need some sort of a reset button. And this division stuff, fans talk about trading guys in division a lot more than actual GMs do because they're just trying to get returns for guys. Now, I can understand you're not trading Claude Giroux to the Penguins. Like, there's a little bit different of a thing there.
Right.
Deeper cuts there.
Trading a guy from Winnipeg to Colorado, who cares? Winnipeg's just trying to get better. And they're already chasing Colorado.
Right. And yes, you'd be moving Scheifele in your division, but you'd also be getting 2 high-end prospects back and a first. So it's like, yeah, both teams left.
Well, and I imagine there would have to be a JT Compher or something there, and obviously Compher doesn't move the needle. But there would have to be some sort of NHL player component there.
Part of the interesting conversation here is, especially in the West, Vegas plays Florida tonight, and then they play LA on Saturday. And if they lose both those games,
Winnipeg, more ground for them to lose.
Yeah, it could be in the playoffs come trade deadline day. So with what has happened, particularly in the Pacific, I think it's really, really hard to get a read on a lot of these Western Conference teams and teams that 3 weeks ago we thought, they'll be sellers for sure.
Well, and that there are some, like Dallas is for sure not selling. Nashville is not selling. Edmonton is not selling. LA is not selling. Like, St. Louis and Minnesota, those are teams that are not selling. That those are the ones. Anaheim with Lindholm and Raquel, they want to sell those guys. But it's everything else. Everybody else should seriously be looking at it, if only because if you're fighting for that second wild card spot, you're playing Colorado.
Yep.
And that's the realistic conversation. It's the second wild card spot. Vegas is 6 points back of Nashville, and there's games in hand considerations all over the place here. So there's already a decent gap to Nashville. So you got all those teams there.
Yeah. It's
Rudo, do you have a dark horse?
What was that?
Do you have a dark horse trade candidate?
I love Max Domi, and I know the rumors have been kicking around about him. We know it's someone the Avs have looked into in the past.
And Columbus.
The connections are there.
Yeah. That'd be it's not Claude Giroux, but I'd like that one.
Yeah, I still think Claude Giroux is the one that makes the most sense. I know AJ has the sense that it's not going to happen, but
I'm just not a believer. The biggest thing that turns me off of Giroux in Colorado is that it's been too public.
Yeah.
Is that the Avalanche are never how often is a guy like out there in the market and connected to Colorado, and Colorado actually ends up dealing for that guy? Like, it never
Vegas
happened.
Isn't involved this time, so maybe
we knew Nemestikov was like that. The Avs loved Nemestikov. We knew that for a full year because they had tried before, and like the Avs have always done that like circle back around thing on guys when they become available. Zadina's a guy that I would talk to. Zadina, and if you really want a dark horse, Pavel Zacha. Those are guys that I think are really interesting summer conversations. But my biggest thing with Colorado and Claude Giroux is just it's been too public. And I just don't like Colorado just doesn't operate like this.
Mm-hmm. I know you're both gonna roll your eyes and laugh, and I am too internally. I just can't get myself past the Patrick Kane stuff.
I just if I hadn't already heard that Chicago had said hard no already, for this deadline, I would be more open. I think Colorado's open to paying whatever they have to pay.
Yeah,
to do whatever they have to do. I just think that it's.
And the only reason I say that is because of how notoriously tight-lipped the Avs are. And, like, that got out for some reason. You know what I mean? Someone leaked that the Avs called Chicago about it for some reason.
I'm sure it's somebody from Chicago who found out about it and was like, you guys aren't going to fucking believe it. Joe Sakic called us up and was like, what about Patty Kane, though? And we were like, nah. But that could be fun in the future.
Yeah.
And that was how it went, and everybody moved on.
Yeah, that's just the only other one that, again, I know there's a 1% chance that happens, but it just has been stuck in my head. DeBrincat's the other one. It jumped out to me immediately that they did not list him as on their full no-go list. And he's another one that, Joe, if you don't get Giroux and you're wanting a big splash, a big fish, that'd be a hell of a get.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how far we are into fantasy land at this point, and that's the hard part, because the Avs could do anything on trade deadline day, and we just won't know until we get there. Or they could do it tomorrow. They could do it in 20 minutes for all we know.
Here's what I'll say. I don't know if we're at the point where there's a move that the Avs could make. I mean, obviously short of trading top guys, right? Sure. But I don't know if there's a player that they could bring in that would surprise me. If we woke up tomorrow and they're like, wow, they traded for Patrick Kane, I wouldn't be like, wow, I can't believe it. Like, yeah, goddamn, he did it. He pulled it off.
Chat brings up the Ottawa guys. I would just like to say, I have no idea what the difference at this point is between Nick Paul, Chris Tierney, Connor Brown, any of those guys. They are all in my brain now one person. And if they get traded for, I am writing the Avalanche traded for the Senator.
Yeah.
That's it.
Hey, big shout out Wade here, former coworker of mine. Thanks for jumping on, man. Appreciate the support.
Let's go. Unfortunately, jumped on right at the very end of the show.
Yeah.
We're wrapping this one up here, but be sure to go get your party bus tickets. We're live tomorrow, pregame, postgame, all that good stuff. Be sure to tune into all of that. We'll all panic and do an emergency pod. This is our 6th show of the week, and we took a day off. So.
It's Thursday.
Yeah. I kept checking my phone this whole time because I was like, it's going to happen right as we're winding this pod down. Like, all right, guys, thanks for tuning in, and the start of the emergency pod.
And
welcome
let's
in.
Talk for another hour.
Yeah, it has been interesting. With just being glued to the phones and with the early activity. There's always a couple of trades leading up to it where you're like a little on edge where you're like, oh. But like we have this whole weekend. The Avs have no games on a Friday or a Saturday for maybe the only time this entire fucking season. And I fully expect us to be doing a pod at some point.
Yeah,
it'll probably be in the middle of Bahrain.
Yeah, of course it would.
I think the move will come. I don't think they'll wait till Monday. I think
I agree with this.
Before Monday.
I think Monday is the day where we see the Shane Bowers get swapped for a defenseman. If there's going to be a third goaltender or a Vlad Nemesnikov, something like that. I think that's
Castle.
the move that happens.
Oh,
Phil
we
Castle. I think that's a Monday thing.
We need things for our Monday trade deadline bingo board, chat.
Oh yeah, we haven't sat down and tried to fill it out yet.
But prospect swap is definitely like the free space.
Yeah, but
I think abs make a trade is the free space.
Yeah.
What is it, like 21 years in a row?
Yeah.
We've got a couple different things like Hannah and I, and it's my niece's first birthday. We've got like a dinner thing, and I've just told everyone like I'm a yes, but just understand the caveat that comes with that. Like,
yeah,
I'll be there, but I may not be there the entire time. I may be there for 90 seconds, and then I've got to turn around and leave. So,
well, I'm excited because Z has expressed interest in watching her first ever actual F1 qualifying and race this weekend. Although we won't be getting up at 6 a.m. to do it, so I'm fully expecting it to ruin that.
Yep, me too. I'm going to a buddy's house. I may be live on Sunday from my friend's backyard, but I'll be ready.
Yeah, perfect.
Nice.
We'll make it work one way or another. Anyway, we're out of here for the day. Thank you, everyone, for hanging out with us. We appreciate all of y'all a ton, and we will talk to you hopefully tomorrow.